Every time you accept the ransom, you eat the bread and live up to the responsibility of accepting the Father's will over your own, you minister to others the death of the Messiah. Do you understand that? That's what that verse is talking about. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show the Lord's death till he come. What does that mean? Every time you accept the ransom, you eat the bread and live up to the responsibility, accepting the Father's will over your own will, you are ministering the Messiah's death. You'll notice that people will want to know, will come up to you and ask you, well, what's different about you? I want what you got. You know, they'll start having conversations with you in the grocery line because they want what you have. They see something in you that they do not possess, and they want what you have. Now, this is not everybody, but there will be some that are curious as to what you have, and they'll want it. Okay, so that's an opportunity to minister. Those are opportunities for sharing the ministry of the kingdom of Yahweh. And what does the word of God say in this wise? He says, he that winneth souls is wise. Does that mean that if you go out and hold a sign on the corner or a bullhorn and say, you need Jesus, that that's a wise thing to do? No, it's talking about he that takes the time to hear from the Spirit of God and draws people to him is a wise person, because that's an opportunity for you to minister to them. You understand what I'm saying? Let's go to verse 27. Wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread, accept the payment of ransom made by his death. I'm going to read it right back to back so that you understand this is not about the convolution of communion, you eating bread and drinking wine. This has nothing to do with that. This is a figurative speaking. This is not a literal speaking. He said, wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread, meaning accept the payment of ransom made by his death, and drink, meaning absorb or assimilate or understand the responsibility or the fate that the Messiah took upon himself unworthily, meaning irreverently, showing lack of respect for what he did in an undeserving manner, shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. What does that guilty of the body and the blood of the Lord mean? It means you may as well have been there and crucified him yourself, because you are guilty of his body and his blood. Now, verse 28, but let a man examine, meaning make acceptable, take responsibility for where his heart is. Look at yourself, examine himself, and so let him accept the ransom and understand the responsibility or the fate that the Messiah endured. Do you remember Cain and Abel? What made Cain angry was Yahweh's acceptance of his brother Abel's offerings and Yahweh's rejection of his offering, right? What did Yahweh say to Cain? He said, if you do well, meaning make sure your heart is right before me, you'll be accepted. If you do not well, meaning if you fail to judge yourself, if you fail to examine yourself, then sin, meaning judgment, lieth at the door. Now let's go on to verse 29. For he that eateth, what does this word eateth mean? It means lives by. I love this word. It's estheo. It means to live by. If you live by the acceptance of the ransom made and understand what the blood was shed for and drink it, that's what this means, and drink it. Understand what the blood was shed for unworthily or irreverently, disrespectfully, and you disrespect those facts, you're eating and you're doing so to the damnation of yourself. That you're going to get this result of a crime that you've done. Okay? You're going to bring condemnation and judgment upon yourself because you're not discerning the Lord's body. What does this mean? You're not seeing the distinction, the separation of everything else from what the sacrifice was he made for his body, his church, his true followers. You are totally mixing everything in and not giving any kind of distinction or separation for what he did. You're totally disrespectful. That's what this is about. This whole not discerning the Lord's body. A typical Christian, let me tell you about discerning the Lord's body. A typical Christian, and I said typical because there are some people that call themselves Christians that really don't understand the derogatory term. They don't understand that that's derogatory. That's why I'm not a Christian. I'm a disciple of Yeshua. I am in the family of Yahweh. I'm his child. You understand? I'm not some person that adheres to the Christian religion. That is not what I'm about. But a typical Christian would be one who doesn't discern the Lord's body. Now, what do I mean by that? They go to a building which they accept to be called a church to make themselves seem spiritual, at least once a week. They do all the rituals required of them by that local body to seemingly be righteous before the people and for themselves. They live however they want and expect that because they did a forced confession, that saves them. That's where that whole eternal security comes from. And like I said, we'll get into that at a later time. Not understanding the sacrifice of Yeshua and what it was for. They don't understand it, okay? Because they're so busy being ritualized that they don't even take the time to understand what was really going on, what everything was really about. Neither do they understand their role in the body. Everybody has a part. 1 Corinthians chapter 12 explains everybody's part, that everybody is a part of the body. You got your eye, you got your ear, you got your hands, you got all these different things. You got apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers. Okay, you got all these different things. And then you got all these different gifts that are, that the people, that the body contains, okay? So they don't understand what part they play. I think Judas would also be a good example of one who doesn't discern the Lord's body. He was right there with Yeshua, and he had so little respect for him that he was willing to sell him out for 30 pieces of silver. Now, a preacher said this once, and I thought this was very good insight. And this is just my opinion, and this is an opinion that I have based on the character of Judas. This preacher said this, and I believe this to be true. Judas was there, and he saw the power of Yeshua. He saw how there were times when the crowd or the elders of the religious society of that day would push Yeshua to the end of a cliff and then let Yeshua would just walk straight through them. They were not able to kill him, okay? And I believe that Judas in his greed thought, you know what, this is an excellent opportunity to make a couple of dollars because I know Yeshua. He's not going to let them capture him. He's going to just walk right through the crowd. Or, you know, he's going to have angels take him up and take him away. You know, Judas had this understanding of who Yeshua was, but yet he didn't discern his body, okay? He didn't make a distinction between all the greed that he had and what was really going on. The typical Christian today would be like a Judas, who would be an example of one who doesn't discern the Lord's body. They don't appreciate the ransom he was going to pay with his body and the justification, the sanctification, the deliverance he was soon to provide by shedding his blood. Judas didn't even respect that. He didn't even respect, like I said, what Yeshua had already done for him, okay? Judas, like many typical Christians, felt like what they wanted, what he wanted, which was the lust of his flesh and the pride of life, what typical Christians want, which is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, was more important than Yeshua sacrificing to restore us back to the relationship with the Father. So people really don't need to understand the relationship. They don't want to understand the relationship. They want the benefits that go along. So they're not discerning the Lord's body. They don't understand what he shed his blood for. They don't really get it. You understand? Let's just coast on what we don't know. Let's just coast on what people tell us. Let's just live off of that. We don't really need to do a deep in-depth study of what this is really about. Let's just go along with what everybody else is saying, with what the majority is saying. This is the same spirit by which those whom say with their mouth they accept that he did what he did, but with their life they misrepresent him. They misrepresent the body. They defame, they disrespect the body, the sacrifice that he made, okay? The word body here is the word soma, but this word soma can be used figuratively or literally and is used in such a wide variety of forms. But it comes from this particular word, and I thought this was awesome. It comes from the word sozo, which means safe, to save, that is to deliver or protect, okay? Heal, preserve, save, to do well, to make whole. What does this sound like? This sounds like salvation. So not discerning the Lord's salvation, not discerning what he did. This is the part I wanted to get to today. Verse 30. This thing ministered to me so awesomely this week. I was completely amped to share it with you. This verse says, for this cause many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep. Now, I've understood that in the past to mean that as a result of people not discerning the Lord's body, respecting it, respecting what he did, respecting the sacrifice that he made, people are weak and sickly and many sleep. Now that could mean a lot of things. That's figuratively and literally. People being weak or sickly or sleep, meaning even death, okay? And that's a lot of broad senses of the meanings there.